be a light for you in dark places when all other lights go out.
Hey guys, it's DCHL Devin here, and welcome to our Nova list reviews. If you guys didn't hear from the previous episode of where I talked about the overall Nova itself, I'm going to be reviewing everyone's list. I have them, which means that I can tell you exactly what Tom Harrison brought, exactly what James Clark brought, exactly what Damian OByrne brought, and you guys will hear the winning lists and all the other lists underneath them. So hopefully you guys wrote your points out correctly because the whole world's gonna know. So let's get right into it, guys. Let's start off with the winning list. Tom Harrison, all right? Tom Harrison had his general as Legless. He was playing a Wood Elf army. Now, if you guys don't know the restrictions on this, you can only play one faction, but within a set of restrictions. If you don't know what those restrictions are, exceptions, I should call them. Those exceptions allow them to ally even though they're only allowed one faction. So take a look at the DC Hobbit League. You will start to know, okay, this is what the exceptions are, and you should be good to go from there. But overall, it's quite extensive for me to go through here. So let's look at it, all right? Tom Harrison had Legless. He had 46 models, a breakpoint of 24, 25% of being 11 remaining, and he had 14 bows in his list. All right, his highest costing general model is Galadriel. Now that's important because the Nova missions often refer to that quite a bit. So in this, he had Legless with armor and an elven cloak, leading 4 wood elves with a bow and a spear, 6 wood elves with a bow and or I believe elf, so these just had spears, and 2 Galadrim with a bow. Then he has Thranduil leading a very similar breakdown of Wood Elves and Galadrim. You notice he's mixing them here. It seems like the goal is to put the Wood Elves kind of in the back of the Galadrim here. They have shields in the front, and then he has a Galadrim Court Guard, it seems. 2 of those, 12 points apiece. So it seems like he has those for a little bit of Fell Beast resistance, and we'll get into that. Next he has Galadriel. Now, this is obviously the Galadriel that is not the combat form we're all used to because she is leading more Galadrim, just straight Galadrim in this case. She has 2 more guards of the Galadrim Court, now 2 more Wood Elves with Spear, and then in the last rank we have Rummel leading more Wood Elves, 3 Wood Elves, and 1 Galadrim with Blade and 2 Galadrim Court Guard. So let's really break this down. Why is he picking what he's picking? Now, obviously, the best person to ask about this would be Tom Harrison himself. We don't have him. He's back in Britain. So what I'm thinking here is he's first off, with his heroes, Galadriel is offering a mobilized support to take down monsters, fell beasts, and the like. She does have, of course, a blinding light capability. She does have command capabilities. This gives him a range of options. He seemed to pick this one also over the regular Galadriel because he needed to lead more troops to get in more bow fire, and of course just more troops in general is always helpful. Legless being the general normally would be interesting to some of you guys, but I understand it. It's the elven cloak. Makes him really hard to deal with. He is not the combat version, so you know he's going to be staying in the back of the field, just sniping things, and it'll be difficult to get to him. So Legless as a general makes perfect logical sense to me. Give him armor, so that way he's just not that basic defense 4. Give him a little more oomph against heroes if he does end up winding up into combat. As far as the Wood Elves, now he has a lot of Wood Elves in his force. I think this is just to keep things costing cheap. He does have some Galadrim. I believe the Galadrim are being placed in the front line. The Galadrim Court Guard, these guys are really anti-Fell Beast, anti-monsters. They are fight 6. You throw them in the back of a rank. Now, he's got 2 of them on purpose, probably stacking 2 behind a single miniature. So what happens is, as a Fell Beast flies in, or as a monster comes in, he can just throw those 2 behind and therefore win the fight, just spear supporting through, adding more attacks and such like that. Obviously, this requires him to not have priority in order for him to adapt to his opponent. The other use for them is, of course, anti-heroes. Most heroes only have fight 5 or lower. Galadrim Court Guard defeat this quite easily. So I think that's what the little pockets of Galadrim Court Guard are. He has a total of 6 in the entire list. That's why he has just these little pockets of men. Now he has Thranduil. Thranduil, of course, the R of Dismay really helps against courage people with really low courage, Legolas sniping out shamans to deal with that, and Thranduil's Nature's Wrath. Of course, the utility spell of all utility spells, just completely useful, and if you manage to drop an entire opponent's army, it's beautiful. Of course, this is also an anti-cav element. His army is fairly, not weak to cav, but they just simply aren't going to have, I mean, other than the fight 5 and the spear sport he gives, this is just that anti-cav element. If you get charged by a ton of Sons of Errol or Rivendell Knights, you're gonna wish you had a Nature's Wrath to just blast them all to the ground. So, lastly, we have Rummel. Rummel, once again, being a solid choice if you're trying to deal with heroes. This hero himself is just, he makes you reroll 6s, makes your opponent reroll 6s. So if you throw him into any fight where you're having a problem, like, once again, Fell Beast, Smaug maybe, I mean, it could be anything big, he will help you win that fight just by his sheer presence alone, and that is a very valuable addition. 46 models is pretty standard in a 800-point game. I think that that's a solid number. 13 bows isn't exactly going to wreck an army, but it will bring someone to you, especially since you have Blinding Light from Galadriel. So this is my analysis of Tom's list. This is exactly what I think it was capable of doing. Now, the good part is I think he fits in enough Galadriel where if monsters come in and start hurling things, he's not going to just die to strength 4, rolls of 4s, all right? He's got the Wood Elves kind of just enough to be cheap, but, you know, backed off enough so that way he's not really having to deal with, you know, dying to all these hurl throws. So that's another thing. If you see that Galadriel Wood Elf mix, I think that's what he was going for. So guys, let's get into the next list, and I'm only going to do 2 a video here on purpose because I want to be able to go into an in-depth analysis, but it seems like it takes me a while to really talk about these. So let's get into the second place champion here at Nova Open. We have Damian OByrne, 800 points. He has Saruman on horse, leading 5 Berserkers and 2 Feral Uruk-hai. He has a Uruk-hai Shaman, leading 5 Berserkers and once again 2 Feral Uruk-hai. Vrasku, leading 9 crossbowmen and 2 Uruk-hai crossbowmen carrying shields, interestingly enough. Then he has Lurtz leading 5 Berserkers and 2 Feral Uruk-hai. Then, of course, Grima. Why would you not pick Grima? And that is his list. All right, so now let's go ahead and break this down. What exactly was he looking for in this list? So obviously Saruman, fantastic choice in any Isengard army, but honestly, it isn't Saruman who's really rounding out this list. Saruman is giving him the magic support he needs in order to be quite effective, but it isn't that makes this list so scary. It's actually all the Berserkers and Feral Uruk-hai. He is literally running around with a bunch of 2 attack strength 4 models, some being defense 6. The Feral Uruk-hai are meant to keep it cheap. They do the same job as the Berserkers, but for a cheaper cost. That way he can boost numbers, and quite a bit of a cheaper cost. It's substantially cheaper, at 3 points less. So this is something Damian seemed to factor in, and he threw in a couple Ferals into every single warband, but keeping it mostly loaded with those Berserkers. You're talking about a total of 15 Berserkers and 6 Feral Uruk-hai. That is a lot of 2 attack strength 4 models, all at fight 4, which is very notable. I mean, you absolutely, if you can go any lower, higher, then yeah, sure, but fight 4 is where you want to keep it. Then he has 11 crossbows. The 11 crossbows are obviously just to deal with armies that want to sit back and shoot. Maybe he might be able to outshoot them. In fact, if I had to hand over who would shoot better than who, I would actually say that Damian's list shoots better than Tom's list. However, Tom, obviously being the Blinding Light professional over there, it kind of throws in a unique dynamic. But overall, Vrasku brings these shots up to like 13, and you're talking about quite a few shots that'll deal with, let's say, Rohan Cav, let's say Rivendell Knights. I wouldn't go incredibly shooty against other highly shooty armies, but it will outgun like Arnor, it will outgun a lot of armies. It's a nice utility unit he's bringing in there onto the side. Now, I'll be honest, and you can see it here just by the fact that he threw some shields on there, Damian is not afraid to throw his crossbows into combat. He knows that they are Uruk-hai still at the end of the day, and therefore he'll toss them in. Looks like Vrasku with 3 points of might could be very useful in a combat situation. So I think what the crossbows are meant to do is make sure the enemy comes to him, and then he deals with them with all the Berserkers, of course using the Uruk-hai as the crossbows as a kind of a support element. After that, he's got 1 Shaman. Now, he only keeps it at 1. That's actually kind of an interesting choice, and I think it's a good choice. It's mostly because of the fact that if there's a Ring Wraith on the field, it's gone. And if there's no Ring Wraith on the field, then 1 is enough. His army isn't so big that it's going to get spread thin too much. Even in matches like Domination, he can still do very well. So I think he'll be perfectly fine with just 1 Shaman here. Lastly, we have Lurtz. Now, a lot of you are like, okay, why would you bring Lurtz? Lurtz brings a healthy 3 might. That's just 1 extra point of might that you didn't have before. He does have a bow, but I don't think Damian probably ever uses it. So he's really just keeping Lurtz around for that extra point of might, that extra solid oomph to the total amount of money he has. And of course, he has Grima. All right, so Grima is a necessary add-in. You pretty much buy Saruman just to get Grima, and the best part is, so he didn't keep him on horse. Now, that means he didn't buy the unreleased miniatures model, I suppose, or maybe he just doesn't have the points to keep him on horse. I don't know. He looks like he's solid at 800 points here. But yeah, that is his list. Notice he does have Saruman on a horse, which is always a good add. To have that extra mobility to be able to cast spells is a great idea. So for any of you guys who are building an Isengard list, this is a very good model to follow. It's just the fact that it hits hard like a train. Now, some of you might ask why the Berserkers rather than just keeping a Phalanx, because Phalanxes actually have more attacks than the Berserkers are going to have. They still have Fight 4, they still have Strength 4. The real reason I think here is Berserkers are completely, 1, it's all in a single model, so even if the Phalanx gets disrupted, you know, he's still got 2 attacks, but 2, these models are completely immune to terror and breaking, so they're just not going to care what they're charging into. That is a really fantastic thing, especially if your Fury disappears from a terror-causing list. Most terror-causing lists, they're going to have something to sap will. Now, why have the Shaman then? Well, the Shaman's giving those healthy 5-up saves, so granted, he's not going to do too much in the realm of Fury, maybe on the crossbowmen, and that's about it, keeping them from being, you know, standfasted and stuff. But other than that, that's why I think the Ferals and the Berserkers add such a punch where normal Uruk-hai couldn't. And you get 2 attacks for about 5 points less. 2 Uruk-hai giving you 2 attacks is 20 points, whereas 1 Berserker is 15. And then you get even less points in a Pharaoh Uruk-hai. So I think that's where he's going to win that option. So, guys, we're going to leave it at that. I'm going to keep these guys as short videos. Next video, we're going to go ahead and analyze James Clark and Benedict Belinsky. Benedict Belinsky being one of the, or actually, no, I apologize. Let's go in order, guys. Let's keep it at Adam Chandler. He's the 4th place at Nova Open. So I think his list will be worth analyzing for those of you who really want to have Eagle lists and Radagast lists. So stay tuned, guys, and we will get to those very soon.